The Jacksonville Jaguars look to continue their hot streak after their big primetime win against the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are about to be involved in another NFC heavyweight showdown. The Ultimate NFL pregame show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 6 in the NFL is officially here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher, and from the primetime game of Lions and Chiefs, which is a potential Super Bowl matchup, to the big 4 o'clock window matchup between the 49ers and the Buccaneers, to why that Seahawks and Jaguars game could be the game of the week. We're going to go game by game, and we're going to make you the most informed fan for game day with the help of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And crazy, we're already in week 6. Feels like yesterday the season started. Now we're in week 2, a bye week. So that's exciting. And a lot of teams looking to either continue hot streaks or get out of ruts. And this is a big point in the season. Want to remind everyone and tell everyone that today's episode of the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Let's start off with the 9:30 a.m. game going abroad. It's the Broncos, it's the Jets, and Sarah Benjer of Locked On Broncos and John Butchko of Locked On Jets have it covered with everything you need to know.
Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Sayer, the co-host of Locked On Broncos, getting you ready for Week 6 action. Jets looking for their first win against the Denver Broncos, a team coming off a huge win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Sayer, give me a key to victory for the Denver Broncos in this one.
Yeah, I think the Broncos can win this game if they get to their season average in rushing yards per game, which is 140 roughly. So if you get to 140 in the rushing department, I think the Broncos can win this game. Just when the Broncos are running the ball well, that feeds into everything that they do offensively. Last year, they did not have much of a running game at all, so they were reliant heavily on Bo Nix and the passing attack, especially the quick passing game to kind of create those chunk plays on early downs. And now with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey coming on a couple of games this season, you've got a pair of players out there in the backfield that can really help you get things going offensively and get into favorable down and distance situations on second and third down. And that's where the Broncos have struggled the most. When they're not running the ball well, they're getting into third and long situations. Against the Chargers, they were average a 3rd and 11 plus. I mean, it was rough out there for them in that particular game. So that early down success with the running game and sustaining it throughout the game, it allows you to get play action for Bo Nix. It allows you to, manipulate with misdirection, run pass option, which we've seen a few more of those this season for the Broncos. So I think everything is hinging on them hitting their season average of 140 rushing yards per game. And I think if they do that, I think they can win this game.
All right, my first key for the Jets is that in their game script, they have to design easy completions for Justin Fields to get him into the flow of the game early. Fields has started 4 of the 5 games for the Jets. He missed the Week 3 game against Tampa Bay with a concussion. I would say that in his 4 starts, there's been one where he was excellent throwing the football against Pittsburgh, one where he was pretty decent against Miami, and 2 games where it was ugly. And I think last week against Dallas was ugly. The Cowboys entered that game with a defense that was on a historically bad pace. They were averaging 8.5 net yards per attempt. So that includes yards you take away from sacks. Entering that game, they were averaging 8.5 net yards per attempt. Jets had 43 net passing yards in the entire first half. Fields' stat line for the game looks respectable, but there was a lot of stat padding against prevent defenses. Look, the Jets are going to be a run-first team, particularly with Fields at quarterback, but they have to get something out of their passing game. And there have been 2 of the 4 Field starts where they haven't. And there's only so much you could do in the first couple of series, but I think what the Jets want to do is make sure Fields gets in the flow of the game, get him feeling comfortable, try and design some easy completions for him so he can at least start to build some confidence at the start of this game. Sayer, give me another key.
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned is critical because the Broncos have given up a lot of big plays through the air this season, whether it's been breakdowns in coverage, somebody not covering a running back, whether it's been penalties deep downfield, or whether it's just been perfectly placed ball on a deep pass that Broncos, even if they had perfect coverage, they can't do anything about it. They got burned by that a number of times against the Colts, against the Chargers. And then obviously this past weekend against the Eagles, I mean, like a 3rd and 17 situation, you're giving up a 50-yard passing play to Devontae Smith because you decided to play press coverage instead of off-man coverage. So I think that's an area that we will see the Jets try to attack. And one of the keys for the Broncos is not giving up big plays, not allowing the Jets to flip the field and controlling field position, because that's something that you want to bury this team deep. I mean, even if Justin Fields is getting into a rhythm of a game, this Broncos defense believes that they can bend and not break. They're one of the best red zone defenses in the NFL. So if they create longer fields, no pun intended, they are believing that they can absolutely, okay, even if we give up a chunk here and there, we can kind of limit the amount of points that they're going to score because we'll tighten up in the red zone. It's allowing those big plays and kind of allowing teams like the Jets or anybody else to reset once they get inside the 40, inside the 30, to have sort of a new set of downs and momentum on their side. That's where the Broncos have really struggled this season defensively.
All right, my second key for the Jets is getting Justin Fields more involved in the run game. Since week 1, Fields has not had more than 7 rushing attempts in the game. And there are 2 elements to this. So your number one, I think, is building design runs for Fields. Jets have been pretty effective running zone read concepts with Fields at quarterback. They just haven't really run a whole lot of them. But I think Fields also needs to be more willing to scramble on drop back passes. Fields is like a very odd mobile quarterback because, say you're like a lot of times, like you'll see a quarterback who's a running quarterback and they just try and run too frequently. It's like they take off at the first sign that like their first read isn't open. If anything, Fields is a little too hesitant to use his legs. He's a guy who has the ability to rip off a 15, 20-yard run. And Fields is at his best when he's running, both in terms of designed runs and scrambles. This is a Jets offense that has to be run first. And again, this is not college football where you're running the wishbone or the triple option. You have to be able to throw the ball. But this is a Jets team that's going to lean on the run more frequently than most of the league. And that involves the quarterback being a key component in the run game. So I think the Jets need to make it a focus to get Fields more involved in the run. Do you have a third key for us?
Yeah, I think really for the Broncos in this game, and it stems from what we've talked about earlier as well, but you don't want to be the team that is the streak ender for the Jets, especially when it comes to their not having forced any turnovers defensively. You don't want to be the team that not only gets their first takeaway of the season, but maybe multiple. Like, you can't have that happen in a game like this where you've taken care of the ball 2 straight games now. You had some trouble with that against the Chargers, against earlier in the season, you've had some trouble with giveaways. So make sure you're taking care of the football in a game like this. And if you're Bo Nix, that means staying with who you are, but also not being reckless, right? You don't need to be reckless in a game like this. You need to trust the process over the course of 4 quarters. The Broncos need to make sure that they are getting those big chunks, like we mentioned, on early down, so they can avoid having to press on the 3rd and long situations and get themselves into tough situations where they may give the ball away to this Jets defense.
Well, great minds think alike. My third key for the Jets is they got to force a turnover, at least one. It's unbelievable that this team's gone 5 weeks without forcing a turnover. And look, there's been some bad luck. I mean, if you've watched other teams play offense, when they fumble the ball, it's like there's always three of their guys around it and no Jets. So, I mean, the Jets have had some really bad fumble luck, but this has been a defense that has not taken advantage of opportunities. In week 1, there were 2 interceptions dropped, one by Michael Carter II, one by Brandon Stevens off Aaron Rodgers. And if either one of those interceptions is made, the Jets probably win that game, and the Jets are not entering this game as the only winless team in the NFL. I hate to bring it down to something as generic as somebody's got to make a play, but somebody's got to make a play for the Jets on defense, whether it's Jermaine Johnson getting to Bo Nix and creating a strip sack, whether it's somebody getting the ball out and hopefully you have better fumble luck, whether it's a corner jumping a route. Somebody's got to make a play, and part of this is that the Jets are the less talented of these 2 teams, and when you're the undermanned team, you need big plays to win the game. Sailor, I'm going to close out by asking for a prediction. What do you think the Broncos need to do to win this game? If the Broncos win, what will happen?
Yeah, I think if the Broncos win this game, what's going to happen is that they dominated on the ground and they didn't turn the ball over, right? That's the identity of this team is playing clean football, that they need to be that way. They need to limit penalties. They had 12 penalties against the Philadelphia Eagles and still managed to find a way to win. I think it was 10 or 12, one of the two. Either way, egregious. They've had way too many penalties this season. So they've got to limit those penalties while still being physical and winning the line of scrimmage. That's where this team struggles, is that they get beat at the line of scrimmage. They struggle against good teams. They struggle against anybody. So that's where I think the Jets may have, an opportunity, is with that injury to the left guard position, is can you establish early on that you're not going to allow the Broncos to dictate the pace of this game with the running game. That's where the Broncos have to be effective right away to start this game.
And my prediction is that if the Jets win this game, it's going to be a combination of this team finally putting together a good game. I think the Jets need to be at their best, and the Broncos need to make mistakes. And that might be a combination of, the long London trip playing a factor. It may be Broncos. It may be that this is actually a trap game, but I think we both agree that if these two teams both play their A game, Broncos are going to win. Jets need the Broncos to be a little bit off, and the Jets need to play their best game. And I think that's really the only path to victory for the New York Jets in this one.
Check out Sarah over at Locked On Broncos and John over at Locked On Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's a lot of action in the 1 p.m. slate of games here. We're going to dive into the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are coming off an impressive win against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Seattle Seahawks, who are going through a tough loss at the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a really good game back in week 5. So Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars and Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks take it through if Trevor Lawrence and that Jaguars offense can keep it all going, or if the Seahawks defense will have something to say about that.
All right, third and final segment of our Thursday crossover presented by PrizePicks, here with my man Corbin Smith. I am Tony Wiggins. Corbin, what does Seattle have to do, and what do they have to avoid in order to have success coming to Duval County?
Well, first, I got to start on the defensive side of the football. They cannot afford to give up the chunk plays in the passing game that they did this past week against Tampa Bay. And getting to see some of those big plays that the Jaguars were able to get against Kansas City's defense on Monday night, they have got to tighten things up on that back end. But really, it boils down to the pass rush creating those opportunities. They were not marrying up their pass rush with their secondary on Sunday at all. They need their defensive line to deliver. You need Boye Mafe to actually show up. He has no sacks so far this year. He's in a contract year. You want another contract from Seattle, you better start playing like you're going to get that contract. They're not going to have Derek Hall. Hopefully DeMarcus Lawrence is back for this game. We'll see. But they need all of those edge guys and the interior defenders. Leonard Williams, play at the all-pro level you've played at most of your time in Seattle. They need that front line to set the tone so they can help the back end of the defense. Even if they have Devin Witherspoon and Julian Love back this week, they're not going to be 100%. You need to protect your secondary. So I'm looking at the pass rush. To me, it is all on those guys to make life tough on Trevor Lawrence. And if they don't, again, you're looking at a repeat here against a team that's got a bunch of good weapons on the outside. You give those guys time. It doesn't matter how good your secondary is. You can't cover forever. That is going to be a problem for them. They've got to have that defensive line show up. And I think they need to get at least 3 sacks in this game on Trevor Lawrence to win in Duval.
That's a good point, because my issue for the Jaguars is, besides the fact that they just played an emotional game, people don't really understand sometimes that when folks have a bad loss, they say you have to have a short memory and you have to forget about it because it'll linger. But when you have an emotional win, sometimes you have to also forget about it. And because it'll linger, you'll be emotional, you'll go out super, super fired up, you won't be relaxed, and then you'll think you're still adding something to that chapter. Well, that chapter's gone. Trevor Lawrence even said at the press conference today, when everybody kept talking about the play where he slipped and got up on the third try. Well, the thing is he say, all right, he answered enough questions. He say, let's move on to Seattle, because they know nothing they did last week is going to help them this week, except in this respect. In the respect that as long as they control their emotions, as long as they keep the main thing that's in front of them, they'll have a shot. Now, on the field, what they have to do, I think they got to run the football. I think they have to have a heavy dose of Travis Etienne, a heavy dose of Bashal Tutin, who is his backup, and then throw in a little bit of LaQuint Allen. But to me, it comes down to what they can do in the running game. They get the running game right. It softens the defense up. It keeps everybody at home. Make sure the linebackers and the safeties have an extra look. And that will allow Brian Thomas Jr. and that will allow Travis Hunter, when he's on offense, to get open down the field. They're going to be missing Brenton Strange, their tight end, who was playing at a super, super high level. They're going to be missing him in the passing game and in their packages where they go 2 tight ends, and they have to make sure that they replace him. He's been put on IR. But it's going to be critical, in my opinion, that the Jaguars run the football, attack when they can with play action, get their receivers some room to operate, and then run well after the catch and create some of those chunk plays that you want Seattle to stay away from. The flip side of it is this. They can't turn it over. They can't have pre-snap penalties. If they start approaching 10 penalties, we got a problem. And they have been letting that clock. I'm going to tell the Seahawks fans something. When that play clock gets to like 8, you're going to hear the Jaguar fans on the TV. If you're coming here, you're going to hear them in the stadium. But you're going to hear them going, go, go, go. They were pushing him. It's almost like Trevor was having a baby and they were saying push or something, man. But because I'm telling you, every single play, they were like, hi, go, go. And sometimes he made it. Sometimes he didn't. Sometimes they had to call timeout. Those are the things that the Jaguars have to clean up. If they do that, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, when I look at Seattle's offense going into this game, I don't want to make it sound like you and I are playing the same record, but really, for me, I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the matchups. Like, Seattle's coming off their best game running the football this year. 122 rushing yards. They had more rushing yards than a couple of the other games, but in terms of efficiency and not having the negative plays, they ran the football the best they have all year. You're starting to see this young offensive line gel from that perspective. You want to win on the road, especially going cross country. You want to go down to Jacksonville and beat a team that just had a statement victory of their own. You want to go make a statement, bring the physicality, bring the run game with you, and create those play action opportunities that Sam Darnold has been so lethal on. They need to get that ground game going early. And I just look at Jacksonville's front seven. This is a different matchup than it was last week. Tampa Bay, look, Jacksonville doesn't have Vita Vea.
No.
You aren't going into this game thinking we've got this massive DT that can wreck games by himself. And if we just try to run into a brick wall that is Vita Vea, good luck getting your offense going. They were passing the ball to really work him and make it difficult for Tampa Bay to really get down in the run. I look at this game, though, and I'm thinking the guys that really scare me are the athletic edge rushers, the athleticism of the linebackers. How do you attack that? Let's get physical with those guys up front. So I think if Seattle can get to 125 rushing yards in this game and have at least one rushing touchdown in the red zone, I think you can guarantee they win this football game. That's how big it is to me. I think if they come in and they are flat running the ball like they were a couple times earlier this year, 49ers game in week 1, didn't run the ball well against New Orleans, ironically, in week 3, but they were throwing the ball so well they didn't need to run the ball. But I think if they go out and they get to the 125 mark, they get Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet going, and the play action off it, the way Sam Darnold has been flinging the pigskin, the way the receivers are playing, I have great confidence that Seattle wins if they can do that. If they're not running the football well and the pass rushers can pin their ears back, then I think this has a chance to turn ugly potentially, especially if the offense isn't playing well and the defense is on the field. You could see one of those snowball games, ironically, in South Florida.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You said something to start the show. You said we should be 5-0. The Jaguars actually should be 5-0. They lost to Cincinnati with that quarterback, Jake Browning, that just got benched, by the way. But on 4th down in their own territory, he threw a pass, and Travis Hunter played textbook defense, and they called pass interference. If any, it's probably the worst DPI I have seen in years, and that's saying something. That's rich because every single week somebody's saying that they're bad calls. But this was textbook defense, got his head around, knocked the ball out, and the explanation was that he didn't turn his head around, and that's just totally 100%. That if they give the Jaguars that play, they walk out of Cincinnati with a win, and they're sitting here at 5-0 instead of 4-1. That being said, I think the Jaguars are going to win because they're not the type of team to get blown out. They're not built or constructed unless somebody has 6 turnovers. They're not going to get blown out. But then these close games, they are a gritty gang, man. That's what I call them. Gritty gang, man. They will get it done and they will figure it out. And that was on full display the other night against the Chiefs, where they looked like they gave the Chiefs every single chance to win, but they found a way to get it done. So I'm going to pick the Jaguars. I'll say it's close. I'll go 24-19 and say the Jaguars pull it out and get the 5-1.
Yeah, I'll give my game prediction on our Friday show of Locked On Seahawks, but I will say this. I'm having a really hard time grappling with this game right now because I just saw what Jacksonville did, and it was incredibly impressive win they had on Monday night. I saw what Seattle's defense did, and I've seen this defense play really well way too often. Like, I cannot see that this group is going to come out playing with pride. Like, they're going to look at that film like, teams don't do that to us. We're a Mike McDonald defense. Like, I think the defense is going to come out on a mission. I think the offense is going to look at this last game like, we were really good, but we still didn't get the job done. I expect that Seattle's going to come in playing their best brand of football. Does that mean they're going to win this game, though? Who knows? Because Jacksonville, to me, Jacksonville has been as big of a surprise as anybody. And, they've had a lot of really good players there that haven't played to their potential, and now it's coming together. And you're starting to see this football team become a real problem. And now it's really a wide open AFC. So I'm still grappling on what I'm going to be picking as far as this game goes. I think it's going to be close. I do expect this to be a one-score game. I'm not sure if I have Seattle coming in getting the win or if I think Jacksonville's going to get done. Because to me, it's that much of a toss-up. I think you have two playoff caliber teams that have played really good football most of this year. And it's really going to boil down to who makes the fewest mistakes. I know that might seem cliche, but I think there's, when you look at overall talent, I think these are very similar teams that in any stadium, I think would play very close football.
Yeah, I wish you had a beeline to the GM up there and kind of nudge him and tell him that little Witherspoon kid that's from Florida, we'll take him. We'll take him back. We'll take that cornerback and we'll take him.
Seattle wants him back. He's just got to get healthy, man.
Yeah. You can ship him on down here. We'll patch him up and heal him up. That dude can flat out get after it, man.
Check out Tony over at Locked On Jaguars and Corbin over at Locked On Seahawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, two teams that suffered really tough losses in different ways, the Baltimore Ravens and the Los Angeles Rams. The Ravens are 1-4, looking to avoid 1-5 before the bye week. Might not have Lamar Jackson in this game. They're in a tough spot. Meanwhile, the Rams, they're coming to Baltimore after losing a heartbreaker to the San Francisco 49ers in prime time in week 5. So Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams and myself, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, will take you through everything you need to know with key storylines, key matchups, and so much more. Continuing on Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams, Kevin Ostreicher and Travis Rogers breaking everything down as the Ravens and Rams gear up for a big Week 6 matchup. I want to remind everyone again, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, Travis, the Rams looking to get back on track again, suffered a heartbreaker against San Francisco. What do they have to do to win this game against the Ravens?
Not do dumb stuff. Right. Like it's as simple as that. Like do the basics and do them reasonably well. And, the Rams are catching a break. The schedule gods have been favorable to them so far that you're likely to catch, a team not only without their starting quarterback, but without an MVP caliber quarterback. That's a pretty nice break. You get a chance to redeem yourself after a week. You get a chance to do all of these different things. So they need to take advantage of it. I'm hearing you, do the FanDuel spot right there. That line seems crazy to me for the simple reason that it was the same line last week against San Francisco. They were playing a bunch of backups too. And I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The Rams have been very un-Rammy. It's a word I've used on Locked On Rams a lot. Like, but very rarely this is Sean McVay's 9th season as the head coach of the Rams. And I could count on one hand in those years where I have said, what is he doing? Like, and it's been a wonderful treat to have a coach that is just really highly competent, that doesn't do a bunch of head scratching things. There's been some head scratching things so far this season. The fourth down play against San Francisco. I didn't mind the decision to go for it. I thought that was the right decision. I thought the play call was weird. He even said as much afterwards. The decision to run behind your fourth guard in Philadelphia with the game on the line, that was a weird decision. There's been some stuff that is very unlike them. So I think if they execute the basics, if they stick to the plan, if they don't make any catastrophic mistakes, again, fumbling on the 1 yard line with the go-ahead touchdown, 3 feet away, it's not like they have systemic problems. They have little dumb things that they need to clean up.
Yeah, on the Ravens side of things, do everything different than you did in week 5. The game, I say this, Trav, I've said it all week. The game was 44-10. It didn't even feel that close. It was awful the entire game. And it's crazy because you look at how the first quarter went, and Houston was only up 7-3. And then after that, Houston put up a 17 spot in the second quarter. And you're like, all right, well, here we go again. I truly think for the Ravens to win, they have to do what when they're fully healthy, I think other teams have to do to them. And that's just kind of slop the game up. Like, make this an ugly game and win ugly. Don't let the offense of the Rams stay on the field. What's the best way to keep a high-powered offense from scoring? You don't let them touch the football. And you have these 10, 11, like, go back to the Greg Roman days early in Baltimore. They take up like 13 minutes of clock on one drive. Like, that's what you have to do here, because you don't want Matthew Stafford and this Rams offense touching the ball. And that, to me, is, I think, the big thing. You also have to establish your run game this time around. The Texans were not as good of a run defense as the Rams are, and the Texans still held the Ravens. Derrick Henry, 15 carries for just 33 yards on the day, because, again, there was no threat. And the offensive line didn't get any push. I mean, the offensive line has to do something. The problem is, like we talked about, they're going up against the God Squad here in this Rams defensive line, which has so many good players on it. So if you can establish the run, it allows those guys to pin their ears back and rush Cooper Rush and get after the quarterback, which is a really tough thing. So they just need to slop this game up and win like 13-12, like some disgusting, maybe scoregami score that's never been seen before. You just got to win ugly. I think that's what they have to do here.
Yeah, look, the Derrick Henry thing is fascinating. I do my daily radio show on ESPN Los Angeles, and my co-host is former Rams Super Bowl champ DeMarco Farr, and we were talking about Derrick Henry, and he said something that really kind of resonated with me. He goes, look, not that it's ever easy to play against a player like Derrick Henry, but it gets so much easier without Lamar Jackson, because you can just commit all of your resources to stopping Derrick Henry. And with Lamar Jackson, you always have to have a guy, if not two guys, fully committed to dealing with Lamar Jackson. It leaves a lot of space. And Cooper Rush is certainly not going to do that. I'm optimistic for the Rams, but I you know this as well as anybody. These games are never easy. They're never lopsided when you think they might be. They always feel close. The Rams tend to play close games and games where maybe they shouldn't. So I think the Rams probably escape with a narrow victory, but I don't think it's going to be Texans-like. I think it might be one of those muck-it-up games that happens that the Rams are on the right side of, but I don't think that they're just going to walk the ball up and down the field on them.
Yeah, the Ravens haven't shown me anything this season to give me confidence that they can beat a team like this right now. Whether it be on-field play, coaching, off-field vibes. Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator, is probably coaching for his job this week. And, people, I went on a show earlier this week, and the host described it as his 4th and 8 for Zach Orr as the defensive coordinator of the Ravens right now. He has to have a big thing, because the bye week is the perfect time to install some new things. You don't have to prep for an opponent. So I probably have it. I have it like 29-20 Rams. I mean, I'm hoping this team can put up 20 points. I'm not sure. And I'm hoping they can give up less than 37. So I guess we're little steps, but even still, 1-5 going into the bye week, not a good place to be if you're the Ravens. You can find Travis over at Locked On Rams. You can find me over at Locked On Ravens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Cardinals and Colts. The Colts have been one of the feel-good stories in the NFL this season. Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor having really good seasons, and that Colts team is looking mighty difficult to beat, but the Arizona Cardinals, they're going to try to do that. So Alice Clancy of Locked On Cardinals and Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts talk about if the Cardinals can stop the Colts hot streak or if the Colts can keep rolling along.
All right, welcome back, everydayers of Locked On Colts and Locked On Cardinals. We are putting a bow on our coverage here of this game. It's going to be an entertaining one. AFC, NFC, so not incredibly consequential to when it comes to tiebreakers and all that good stuff by season's end. But I do think this is going to be an entertaining matchup nonetheless. All right, so Alex, when you look at this, the Cardinals did start out 2-0. They've lost 3 very close ones. Again, like we mentioned at the top, 1-score games all around. So the Cardinals are definitely an any given Sunday team. It seems like they can compete with just about anyone. So if they're going to win this game, what do they got to do?
The offense can't wait until the third quarter to wake up. The offense can't be a bottom 5 offense for the majority of the game. And if they do get a lead, not just sitting on your hands hoping the other team decides to take a nap for the rest of the game until the clock runs out. Like, it sounds like a joke. I've been living in a circus for the last 3 weeks. Like, truly, it's the wildest, incomprehensible, like, brain-wise, being able to break down and download what we've witnessed and how these Cardinals have lost the last 3 games. They're very different, but they've all got the same theme. You play to not lose the game instead of playing to win it, and it's been very, very obvious. The key to victory for the Cardinals is have a cohesive game plan, execute it for 60 minutes, as opposed to being really good for half of it and really bad for the other half.
I'm very familiar with that. Not as much this year, but it took until this year for the Colts to have any sort of identity, I feel. Yeah. Offensively, you never knew what to expect. Defensively, you never knew what to expect. It feels like they finally have the right people in place. But, yeah, it's not a fun place to live right there. So, for the Colts, they've got the one loss, but why they lost in that game was incredibly evident. So, number one, you obviously have to protect Daniel Jones. He's done very well against the blitz and against pressure. He's been more able to escape pressure than I expected. He's always been able to move around a bit, but I didn't expect him to have the sack avoidance of Anthony Richardson, essentially. So the Rams in that win were able to get pressure on him consistently, throughout the game. And it was only 2 sacks, but he was moving around a lot and having to make quick decisions, getting hammered after throws, things like that. Now, the Colts were without their right guard in that game, Matt Gonzalez. He's back now, so the Colts will be at full strength up front. So I do still think, especially with Calais Campbell, I don't care if he's 22 or if he is 72, the guy is going to be giving the Colts problems. He's done it for every team he's played for. So he's always got me worried. And then, of course, the Cardinals just are defensively solid overall, so they shouldn't be discounted. So you got to protect Daniel Jones. Got to protect the ball too, obviously. That's a given, duh. Yeah. But the Colts had not turned the ball over at all leading up into the Rams game 2 weeks ago. They turned it over 3 times in that game. Obviously, one was the A.D. Mitchell gaffe, and then, Daniel Jones had a couple throws that he just really would like back, just press things when it didn't really need to be done. So protect the ball. Don't give the other team extra opportunities. And then really effectiveness in the red zone is big because they were one of the worst teams in the league coming into just last week. It's crazy because they've been one of the high-scoring teams throughout the season, but they were not good in the red zone. But they were a perfect 6 for 6 last week. A lot of that was the defense giving them great field position with turnovers and things like that. But you got to have that effectiveness in the red zone, whether it's Tyler Warren or Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs. You're finding ways to get other guys involved. But a big part of that as well is they've got a new kicker. So their kicker, Spencer Schrader, was doing really, really well, had only missed 1 kick between field goals and extra points all year. But he got hit after an extra point in his knee, and then he's done for the year. So they brought in Michael Badgley, who he's been with the Colts twice before, but he did tear a hamstring last offseason and cost him to miss the entire year. So that one is, he worked out for them. They know he's got a clean bill of health, and he impressed in his workout. But at the same time, kickers are so volatile. Where you could go and count on Spencer Schrader each and every time he was going out there, Badgley's going to have to prove that he deserves that same kind of trust, So you hate to, kind of hang things on a kicker there, but having a different kicker than the one who's been absolutely automatic makes you a little nervous.
Yeah. All of that. The Jonathan Taylor inside the red zone stuff kind of terrifies me, especially late in games. That stuff. Mina Kimes had a great number. The Cardinals are top 5 in defensive EPA in the first half. They're bottom 5 defensive EPA in the second half. That may even be the first quarter and fourth quarter more centralized. So that could be nightmare fuel for this team. But the things that the Cardinals do check the boxes on is they are good in coverage. Josh Sweat and Baron Browning and Jordan Birch have been really good off the edge. Calais and Dalvin Tomlinson have done their job on the interior. And this is going to come down to, is it Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett? And either way, I want the restrictor plate off. If you're going to make mistakes, make them huge, because if the Cardinals lose in convincing fashion, I don't see a world where somebody doesn't get let go. I don't think it's going to be the head coach. I think Drew Petzing's going to be the patsy at this point, even though he does share some blame. But enough is enough. This went from not having to have this conversation until losing to Tennessee, and then, oh no, now you have to have this conversation. So shame on them for losing the last 3 games the way they did. They could 100% be 4-1, 100% be atop of the NFC, and they decided to, shoot themselves in the foot 3 games in a row. So this is going to be a real determinant on the future of the coaching staff of this team.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to see him go out with a whimper, especially when you know they're capable of more. It's the argument I feel like I've had to have with the Colts over the last few years. Yeah. So obviously, 3 straight losses, I'm sure you don't feel great, but like, do you have any optimism in this one? Like, do you think there's you think the Cardinals could win it?
I mean, listen, they've got the, like, if Jake, this is what a little exercise before we get out of here. This is a little exercise that I do for my viewers. It's like, okay, look around the NFL. Yeah. How many worse offenses are there than the Arizona Cardinals, even though they're playing poorly? 8?
Probably, yeah.
10? Like, it's bad, and it could be so much worse. So if the bad turns to good, then you're fine. Yeah. So, yeah, the Cardinals could 100% win this game. Like, this isn't like they're, the Browns or the Jets right now. Like, they're beating themselves much more than the opponents are beating them. Their defense is giving up 19 points a game on average in 3 losses, which is bananas. Mm-hmm. So they could 100% win this game. 100% win this game. But it's going to be a matter of how they lose if they lose. If they lose 40-10, yeah, we're going to have different conversations.
Yeah, this one for the Colts, I don't know what to expect just because this is the kind of matchup they've won pretty handily throughout the year so far. But I do feel like Arizona's defense, I struggle to see the Colts having a total cakewalk against that.
Yeah, no.
It could be something where like a turnover here or there leads to bonus points for them and things like that to create a big lead. But just like straight up offense versus defense, I do think it's a pretty good matchup. And that defense does some things, especially in coverage, that are very interesting. I think it depends on how the pass rush marries with that coverage. Like if they make Daniel Jones hesitate a second as to what he's seeing and there's pressure bearing down, obviously that could lead to some errant throws. We saw it against the Rams. But if he has time to throw, then that's kind of his bread and butter, is taking what the defense gives him. And he's gone above and beyond what I think any of us expected to this point. Because Shane Steichen's putting him in some really good places. So we'll see. I mean, the familiarity with Jonathan Gannon and vice versa. Because I mean, Gannon's plenty familiar with Shane Steichen as well. But all I know is I'm very interested in this matchup. I think it's going to be fun. I like when the Colts get to tangle it up with a team all the way out in the NFC West that you don't get to see very often. But yeah, it's this could be a huge win. It could be narrow. It could be the Cardinals win. I don't know what to expect in this one, and I think that's probably what makes it more entertaining coming into it.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked. I mean, it's going to be fascinating. Daniel Jones is a perfect example of, and this is what we struggle with Kyler and Drew Petzing is these guys are NFL quarterbacks. Okay, so you put them in. It's like having the 12th guy on the bench, having a wide open 3 in the middle of a game. It's like he's going to make it. He's an NBA player. So if you put a quarterback in the position to succeed, irrespective of what he looked like in East Rutherford, I mean, the dude's balling out. Like, I'm not surprised. He was drafted number 4 overall for a reason.
Check out Alex over at Locked On Cardinals and Jake over at Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up in the second part of the show, still plenty of great 1 p.m. action we're going to dive into for week number 6 with the help of our local experts. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. First, this show is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother as well. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL pregame show, Kevin Ostreicher still here with you, diving into all of Week 6 action across the NFL with the help of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's keep the 1 p.m. slate of games going. Still a lot of great games to talk about. We'll start off with a big AFC North battle between the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers coming off of their bye and in first place in what has been a very underwhelming AFC North division this season. Cleveland officially is Dylan Gabriel time. Joe Flacco was off to Cincinnati, which we'll dive into a little later in the show. But Spencer German of Locked On Browns and Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers talk about which team will come out on top in the big AFC North bout.
We're back here on Crossover Thursday. Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, Spencer German of Locked On Browns. Spencer, I'm going to read out a response to a question that Aaron Rodgers gave on Wednesday in the locker room. I was there for this. And he was asked about AFC North rivalries in the league. And, of course, Aaron Rodgers knows plenty about rivalries with the NFC North, which is a classic division. But here's what he said. He said, I was asking Patrick Queen about it the other day because he's been on both sides, playing with the Ravens and now with the Steelers. In my own time in the North and the NFC, I think there's always been a great rivalry with Chicago and Minnesota. The states kind of don't like each other, so there was more bad blood between the fans. Detroit, there wasn't the same type of energy. We wanted to beat them, but there wasn't like the hatred that Wisconsin people have for Minnesota. So just old school rivalry there. It seems like that it's like that with this, that kind of rivalry is with the Browns, and the hatred goes both ways between the Steelers and the Bengals and the Steelers and the Ravens. Basically kind of saying that of the three AFC, the hatred, it's up here with the Ravens, it's up here with the Bengals, but it's more here with the Browns. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, that's just his perspective. And Patrick Queen himself just became a Steeler last year. I think part of it is just the history of the animosity. The Ravens and the Steelers have both top dogs. The Bengals were always that team that kind of just hurt the Steelers right before the playoffs with injuries and got into the playoffs a little bit. But it's only been recently that the Browns have started to bite back at the Steelers. They beat them in the playoffs, and the Steelers haven't won in Cleveland since 2021. But I do think there's a different temperament there. What's your read on, one, that comment, but also this rivalry?
Yeah, I love this conversation because I think people are going to be mad, but I think Aaron Rodgers is kind of right in that it is kind of one-sided. Listen, living in Cleveland, talking to fans, all that, like, I get how it goes. You know, I also grew up in Pennsylvania for several years, so I know how Steelers fans are and how they sort of see this. I think a lot, like, to your point, I think the rivalry the Steelers have with the Bengals and the Ravens kind of extends from, listen, the early 2000s when those teams would face off in playoffs, and there was a lot of hard hitting, and like the Vontaze Burfict hit on Antonio Brown, and the hit on Carson Palmer that knocks the Bengals, that ruins the Bengals postseason early in the early 2000s. Like, there's so many different stories there. The Browns and Steelers, like, they just don't have those things, right? There's the 1 year in 2020. And so I do think this is like a big brother, little brother type thing where Browns fans have hated being basically just beaten up on by the Steelers all these years. And so they want that revenge, and they're ready to sort of, you know, punch back at big brother who's bullied them all their lives. But the Steelers don't really see them as much of a threat at this point still, because they still haven't gotten their you-know-what together. So I've always kind of argued, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this because I don't want Browns fans to be mad, but I've always kind of argued that I think the Ravens should be the team that Browns fans hate the most, simply because they stole their team. That is the original Browns, right? Like, that's the original Browns. I mean, and I get it from a geographic standpoint, like Pittsburgh and Cleveland are only like 2 hours apart. It's super close. I also think they're all, like, the other part of this too is when the Browns were gone, I know for a fact there's a lot of people in Ohio, Northeast Ohio especially, who gravitated toward the Steelers during those couple years because they were good and the Browns weren't. And even in the early 2000s when the Browns came back, but they were bad, I think a lot of people sort of stuck with that. And so there's a lot of people in Cleveland, young people in Cleveland, who grew up Steelers fans because their parents are like, well, hey, I'm going to go gravitate towards this team because we don't have a team anymore. So I think that plays a role in it too. But yeah, listen, I think what Aaron Rodgers said is probably fair in terms of his assessment, even though he's kind of new to this situation. that doesn't mean it. Like, if the Browns won this game on Sunday, it would mean a lot to the fan base. Like anytime they beat the Steelers, it's a party. Like they love that, and I understand why. So I'm not begrudging fans not to get excited if that happens, but I do think there is like that big brother little brother sort of thing going on here, where I get where the Steelers look at the Bengals and Ravens as bigger rivals, and the Browns are just kind of there. But the Browns, it's always about chasing Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it honestly is. I think that's the thing here is that, like, again, like that playoff win in the 2020-2021 season, it was like the first time the Browns could really stick it to the Steelers and be like, ha ha, we ruined your year. And like, Ben Roethlisberger, like, crying on the bench. But even with that, like the next year he comes back as old man Ben and he sweeps the Browns when that was supposed to be their year with Baker Mayfield. Everything was supposed to happen. So like the Browns just haven't had their chance to kind of plant their flag. And I think that's part of it. And also the history, and I want to get your perspective on this, the history that the Browns have of oftentimes, and sometimes this just happens because they often play the Steelers at the end of the season, but they often fire their coaches after they lose to the Steelers historically. And I don't think it's going to happen this week. Kevin Stefanski, a 2-time coach of the year, has a respect there, but the Browns, we all knew this was going to be a rebuilding year for them. I think a lot of people picked them to finish last in the division, but they're 1-4, and there's a lot of struggles and there's frustrations and things like that. What is the temperament around Kevin Stefanski right now when it comes to the Browns and how things have been handled and, going into this game?
Yeah, listen, Hugh Jackson was fired. He was the last coach that was fired after losing to the Steelers back in, I guess it would have been 2018. And then Freddie Kitchens ends up taking over the next year, and he only gets the 1 year, and then that paves the way for Kevin Stefanski to get hired in 2020. And you're right, like I've talked a lot on my podcast about how I think in general Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, you could call it a pass, I guess. I think they're kind of getting a mulligan for the Deshaun thing. Like I think they'll be back next year because I think Jimmy Haslam wants to give them a chance to sort of fix this thing and get it right after the Deshaun thing. But it also can't be ignored that, especially after last week, Kevin Stefanski came under a lot of fire in that game in London for how he sort of managed things and in the offense, 10 straight games that I alluded to earlier without scoring 20 points. And he is supposed to be this great offensive coach, right? I mean, the guy that he was going against, Kevin O'Connell, had Carson Wentz and 3/5 of his offensive line gone, and he found a way to win a game. And Kevin Stefanski just can't seem to do that. I get that the talent isn't there, but at some point, like, you run out of excuses. You run out of places to blame. You are what your record says you are. You are what your offense says you are if you're Kevin Stefanski. So, again, I'm not saying he's going to get fired after this week. I think that would be wildly irresponsible for me to say. But I can't act like this isn't a pretty important game in terms of, like, his continued assessment as the season goes on. Like, if he's going to get fired, it probably won't be till the end of the year. But I do think, like, going to Pittsburgh, and if this game gets ugly, especially as this Joe Flacco trade seemed to catch everybody off guard, there was kind of a malaise in the locker room on Wednesday. Like, I don't know if that's like jet lag from London. Like, I don't know what it is. But if they go into Pittsburgh and they get absolutely steamrolled, and the offense continues to struggle as you turn to Dylan Gabriel for another game, and you're kind of pivoting to let's see what these guys have, these rookies have at quarterback, like, it's going to get louder and louder and louder. Like, it'll be another sort of notch in the belt for, is this the right guy for this team moving forward? And I think it will start to tell more of that story. So, again, I don't think he's getting fired, but I do think this is another important game for Stefanski if he's going to sort of salvage this season. And even though I think he's back next year, things can change over 12 weeks that remain on this schedule. And if it gets really bad, or if it gets bad to worse, then, like, I think there would be a conversation there by the time you get to the end of the season. That starts on Sunday with Pittsburgh.
Spencer's over at Locked On Browns. Chris is over at Locked On Steelers. Be sure to go support them. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Cowboys and the Panthers. This is the next game we're going to in week 6. Dak Prescott versus Bryce Young. The Cowboys are coming off a big win against the Jets, and the Panthers are just looking for something here. So Julian Council of Locked On Panthers, as well as Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys, taking through everything you need to know.
All right, back here on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Cowboys, presented by our friends over at PrizePicks. Again, guys, download the PrizePicks app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Julian Council, host of Locked On Panthers, Marcus Mosher, the host of Locked On Cowboys, looking at this game. On Sunday, Marcus, the Cowboys are 3.5 road favorites. Now, it will be on the road. It will be in Charlotte, but there will still be plenty of Cowboy fans in the stands here at Bank of America Stadium. So we'll see what kind of advantage that gives them, and if Carolina can keep those fans quiet, get their fans on their feet, and make this a hell of a ball game, which I think it could be. I think there could be a shootout. But looking at it, 3 things, 3 keys. What are the 3 keys to victory for Dallas on Sunday?
Number one, Dak Prescott's got to play at an MVP level, and I know that's going to be really hard for any quarterback to sustain that level of play game in and game out. But this is an incredibly flawed team with a lot of injuries right now, and they're asking their superstar quarterback to be a superstar. And to his credit, he's done it almost every single week. So if he can play at a high level, he's going to give them a great chance to win. You've got to figure out a way to get at least a couple turnovers on defense. They're not going to stop Carolina on every possession. They're not going to hold them to 10 points. Get a couple takeaways. Dallas got a strip sack, a fumble against Breece Hall in week 5. They were able to stop the Jets twice on 4th down. Those are big momentum changing plays. If the Cowboys can do that, I think they'll be just fine. And the last thing, and we say it every week, is they've got to win the special teams battle. And that is a part that the Cowboys have done really well with Brandon Aubrey, who might be the best kicker in the league. They've got one of the better return units. With the defense still being so iffy, if you can win the offensive phase of the game and special teams, that's how you steal a game in Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's probably why Dallas is so good offensively, is all they got to do is get to the 50, and there's 3 points right there on the board. Just insane.
Well, they were during the broadcast on Sunday, they were saying, you start the ball at the 35 on a touchback, right? You need just 1 first down and you're in Brandon Aubrey range. And that's, it's a little exaggerated, but not really, right? Like,
no.
If you can get 15, 16 yards, you are technically in field goal range. And that does help the Cowboys offense quite a bit, knowing they have that in their back pocket.
Absolutely. And I know that they're probably going to vote out the tush push next offseason. I'm curious what they're going to do about these footballs, man, because these things, they are juiced. And if guys are able to kick the field goals that they are from the link, like, maybe we've lost the plot a little bit. It's cool to see, but it's like, come on.
Maybe make them kick with their non-dominant leg, I guess, right? Maybe a little more interesting.
Just give them the balls like they used to before the game. Don't do what you're doing now. This is crazy, but it's been fun to watch. I will say that. As for Carolina, they got to keep up with Dallas offensively. I don't think this is going to be a defensive grinded out kind of game on Sunday. Dallas is averaging 34. Carolina's averaging 24. The Panthers are going to have to Dallas is averaging 30. Carolina's averaging 20. But Carolina's going to have to find a way to get to that 30 range. And you look at the Cowboys so far this season, looking at EPA, number 1 offensive EPA. Dead last defensively in EPA. So thank you to our friends over at True Media for those stats. So very good on offense, very bad on defense, which should offer opportunities for Carolina on Sunday. Bryce Young, when he turns the ball over, the Panthers, they lose. They're 2-18 when Bryce Young has turned the ball over. Now, he did it twice on Sunday. They were able to overcome that. Only the second time that's happened. The other time was last year against New Orleans. I don't think against this Cowboys team, with the way Dak Prescott is playing, they're going to be able to overcome 2 turnovers, especially in the first half, and another 17-0 hole. So Bryce has got to take care of the ball like he did against Atlanta in that win, and against New England, even in that blowout loss. And in the last one, we talked about it earlier, the matchup between Rico Dowdle and also between Devontae Williams, run the ball. Dallas has not been great against the run so far. They're actually dead last in success rate against the run defensively so far this season. Carolina has been just okay, right on the fringe of top 10 so far this year, even though they've not necessarily had the success that a lot of people expected up until Sunday, where Rico ran for 206 yards. He said, buckle up. He's ready to go. Brian Schottenheimer has responded and said he will be buckled. So that will be a very interesting thing to watch play out on Sunday. So those are the 3 things I have for Carolina. And of course, the other, take care of the quarterback and all the other stuff we always talk about, special teams. But those are my keys for on Sunday.
It just feels like we're talking about a game that should be like 34-28 or 34-21, which inevitably means we're going to get like a 10-7 slugfest, during this 1 p.m. slot. We'll see, but everything points to this being a shootout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't, hold on. We got FanDuel right here. What's the over under is only 49.5. So
Only.
That feels
10
low to
points too
me.
low.
Yeah. So we'll see how that all plays out. But Panthers welcoming the Cowboys on Sunday. Do you have any prediction? My only prediction is take the over.
There you go. That's my prediction as well. I think we're going to see a lot of points, and I would not be surprised if this is a game where maybe Carolina builds a little bit of a lead early, and we see Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense fighting back. Can't wait. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, and I talked to Panther fans about this last week. We'd find out who this team was, a little bit more about them based on how they responded after the loss to New England. Didn't look great at the beginning against Miami. They came back, were able to win that game. And now with this one, Dave Canales told us back in the spring that it would take 4 to 6 weeks to figure out who this team is. Well, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. You had 3 games on the road out of the first 4 weeks. Now you're going to have 3 home, 3 away. And if they get to 500 or they're 2-4, we'll know who this Panthers team is. So I'm very excited to see how this game plays out. And I will be there on Sunday, and I'm expecting, and I'm looking forward to a shootout. Yeah, that might mean people here in Carolina are like, Jero Vero, got to fire him. But sometimes it's fun to watch points on the board because Lord knows here in Carolina, there have been plenty of times where points were not going on the board for them offensively.
This probably a game between 2 non-playoff teams, so let's at least have fun, right, Julian?
Absolutely. Definitely one team I know for sure won't be a playoff team. Sorry, Carolina Panther fans. Think there's a lot they still got to figure out. But for Dallas, we'll see. Jerry still believes, which means he's probably only a few days away from doing something stupid. So we'll see how it plays out.
You can find Marcus over at Locked On Cowboys and Julian over at Locked On Panthers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Patriots and Saints. The Patriots coming off a huge win against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. Meanwhile, the Saints, well, they're going to hope to win. That's what they're going to go for here. Get some positive momentum. Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots, Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints. They dive into which team will come out on top.
Let's get it, y'all. Wrapping up this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Saints with what each team needs to do to get a win. And so, Nick, I will open it up to you, buddy. What the Patriots win if what?
I'm going to say this again this week. I say it every week until I hopefully see it actually happen. The Patriots run the ball. If the Patriots can run the football, it'll make their offense that much better. What's crazy, Ross, is Drake May obviously playing like a top 10 quarterback through the first 5 weeks when you look at the analytics, the metrics, the stats. And that's with a one-dimensional offense. This team has been brutal running the football. They have not been able to do it. And I look at a Saints defense that is 29th in run-stop win rate. It seems like a matchup that they should be able to take advantage of, but I have felt that way multiple times this year, and they haven't been able to do it. So will they be able to run the football? If they can, then I think they can put up a good amount of points against the Saints defense.
Yeah, I think that becomes a really, really big one. The Saints 14th in the NFL when it comes to opponent rushing yards per attempt, 4.2 yards. Like they're an okay rushing defense, but I think in a lot of cases too, you got to think about how much in that Seattle game they were aided because Seattle ain't have to run nothing. They didn't have to do any of that. And so like you wonder how much the metrics are. And so, yeah, I think giving any kind of run game to the Patriots would be of grave detriment for New Orleans in this game. I think for the Saints defense, it comes down to forcing turnovers again. This was a Saints defense that forced 5 consecutive turnovers last week, 3 straight fumbles, 2 straight interceptions, both by Kool-Aid McKinstry, which are interceptions 1 and 2 of his career. Was that the Saints being a takeaway machine, or was that the Giants being a giveaway machine, right? And so figuring out that literally one of them, Jackson Dart, just dropped the football and kind of handed it over to, so that one you can say was the giveaway more than a takeaway. But, you talk about Brian Brzee and what he's done, the punch out when he punched the ball out of Cam Scadaboo's arms, like that was a really solid play there, led to an 86-yard fumble return for a touchdown, so on and so forth. And so I think that's got to be one of the biggest things for New Orleans here is going out there and showing that, they can be a ball hawking, takeaway driven defense, which would be a good thing for them to still be able to do while they're trying to figure out their pressure packages and how to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the turnover differential as well. You got a +2 against Buffalo. Major reason why you won that game in Buffalo. I mentioned the Pittsburgh game earlier in this episode. That was the downfall of the Patriots in that game. They should have easily won that game against the Steelers, but they literally gave it away. And as you mentioned, New Orleans was a +5, and you just look at last week, just alone what they were able to do. They were pretty much a net neutral, right? Until last week, and they bump it up. So if you get extra possessions, you never know what's going to happen. And usually it means a lot of points. That wasn't necessarily the case last weekend for the Saints. They got all those turnovers. They didn't really convert all those turnovers into big points. I would not bet on them doing that again for a second straight week if they can get those turnovers again. I think an NFL team will be able to convert that. And the final thing I will say about this game is just the trenches. It's old school football. It's boring and all that stuff. I'm not gonna get too deep into it until my episode to wrap up the week at Locked On Patriots. But I do think this is a matchup that is conducive to the Patriots winning on both sides of the football in the trenches. If they can play at their level, and what I've seen from New Orleans and what I see from their analytics, they've struggled on both sides of the ball on the defensive line and offensive line. So I think if you win the trenches, then you can maybe get some push, get the run game going, protect Drake May, score enough points, and get out of there with a W.
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge for them. That's going to be huge for them for sure. I think the last thing that I'll mention for New Orleans going into this one is going to come down to Kellen Moore's offense continuing to grow. That 87-yard touchdown reception from Rashid Shaheed thrown by Spencer Rattler was a play that what was a tendency breaker for something the Saints started doing all the way back in week 2. And they did it again against Buffalo, and they did it again a couple of times up against the Giants. And then they flipped it on its head with that 13 personnel first down under center look, which they had run out of 6 times out of 6 before that, and then uncorked this big play action, bomb down the field, a 2-man route, half field read kind of a situation. And you need more of those types of things. You need more of those, like, hey, set this up a couple of weeks ago, cashing in on it. Got to be careful because you got to save some things throughout the season. But as long as Kellen Moore's offense continues to grow and continues to evolve, I think that's going to help the Saints stay in more games, because to your point, the Saints did not adequately score points off of turnovers. They were 0-3 in the red zone last week as well. And red zone offense has continued to be an issue for them. The play calling hasn't been great, and the execution has been lacking in some cases. And then you have an offense as a whole right now that's just not putting a lot of points on the board. For instance, last week on the fumble recovery for a touchdown, technically, the defense scored as many points off of turnovers as the Saints offense did, because the Saints offense had two field goals, and that was a fumble return for a touchdown. And you know what? They got the extra point out of that too. So technically, maybe you could say that the defense had more points off of turnovers than the Saints actually did, 7-6. And so I think those are areas where the Saints are going to have to be able to be right if they want to end up leaving, not the Big Easy, but coming out of that game, leaving the Caesars Superdome with their second win of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the Kellen Moore offense. It's a fun offense for me to watch. It's multiple. It's versatile. He does a number of different things. So it'll be an interesting challenge for sure if the Patriots can stay disciplined against some of the window dressing he likes to throw out there.
Be sure to support Nick over at Locked On Patriots and Russ over at Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 1 p.m. slate of games, we got the Los Angeles Chargers and the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are in a very interesting situation. Mike McDaniel is his job. Is that something that's secure? Is he on the hot seat? Meanwhile, the Chargers, they're banged up right now. Just made a trade with the Baltimore Ravens, and they're looking to hopefully get back on track after a hot start to the season. So David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers and Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins talk about which team can pick up a big AFC win.
All right, David. So 3 keys to victory for each one of us is what they prescribe to us every week to bring to the table here. So I'd love to hear from you. 3 keys to victory for the Chargers to come cross country and beat the Dolphins.
Yeah, so I think starting with the offensive line, the Chargers have to absolutely give Justin Herbert some more time. The last 3 weeks, 38 quick pressures, which leads the NFL, 63 total pressures with a 48.1% pressure rate. It's just not sustainable. You can't play offense like that, and Justin Herbert has been getting hit a bunch of times. It just has to stop. You got to be able to give your all-world quarterback just that extra second to be able to process the field and be able to hit his receivers. Number 2 is you got to find the running game. As I said before, you're going to be on your third and fourth running backs. But the Panthers put up 239 yards rushing on 32 carries, and the Dolphins, I said, are towards the bottom of the league against the rush. So it's not, the greatest matchup for the Chargers, but they have to find a way to be able to provide some productivity, because that running game will also assist your pass protection as well, be able to slow that down a little bit. And then last but not least, you got to play clean football. In the last 2 games, the Chargers have been penalized 24 times for 192 yards, and they've also coughed the ball up 4 times. You just can't do that and expect to win football games. You have to play cleaner, more sound football. You cannot give the other team, the Dolphins, more opportunities and then also shoot yourself in the foot with the penalties. It has to stop if the Chargers want to have any chance to win this game on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned penalties. It's a big point of focus for this one too, where, Miami's standpoint, they go the second and third quarters. They don't possess the ball for more than 3 minutes on any of their drives. They have a chunk play. You get called for a holding penalty, and it takes it back off the board. And it might be a 10-yard penalty, but when you consider the yards that were gained on the play, it's 25 hitting yards. It's a quarter of the field. It's a huge deal. And it happens with the Dolphins way too often. And then defensively, they were super undisciplined as far as playing on the perimeter and contact outside the contact window and coverage. And it came down to the game. They had 1 minute and 10 seconds left. They chose to punt the ball back to Carolina because they had a 4th and long. And you get 2 stops on 1st and 2nd down. You get a 3rd and long, and you get called for a coverage penalty, and it gives them an automatic 1st down, and the game's over. Yeah. So the penalties element for Miami, they've been pretty clean, all things considered. 34 penalties through 5 games. But only 241 yards. So, if you take an average of yards, they're not getting killed from a yards perspective, but it's when those are happening that is absolutely killing this team right now. So that's one of the points of emphasis for me, keys to victory. You got to be a lot more disciplined. I think the other thing for me is finding ways to force the Chargers into the obvious passing situations that you talked about, where the pass protection issues can show up. The Dolphins' defense this season as a whole, they're horrible on 3rd down. They're giving up 50% of their 3rd down attempts for 1st downs. That ranks 31st in the league. But when it's 7 yards or more to gain, that number drops to 26%. So you just can't keep living in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. And they've seen a lot of that because they've been so porous on the rundown defense in the early downs. So finding a way to get those 3rd and long and late situations where I think the best pass rusher thus far has been Jalen Phillips for Miami, and he's really starting to come on strong. He finally got the 1st sack since coming back this season from what was a season-ending injury last year where he suffered a partially torn ACL. He can eat in those situations, but you have to be able to earn the right to rush the passer, and they have not. And you have to possess the football offensively. You have to take the air out of this. You have to turn this into a game where both teams are lucky if they get 9 possessions, 10 possessions. This can't be a short possession, 3 minutes time of possession, kick the ball back. That's what you did for 45 minutes against the Panthers. You ended up leading that game for 54 minutes before you surrendered the lead. And that's in large part because you couldn't run the ball and possess the ball. Yeah. So I think for Miami, without the Tyreek Hill element, taking some of the pressure off the passing game, they have their own offensive line issues with a rookie left guard and Jonas Avainaya. The entire right side of the offensive line is backup players because both James Daniels and Austin Jackson are injured reserve. All of that behooves you to run the ball and not put those guys under extra pressure. So figuring out what that looks like for Miami, that's the 3rd key to victory for me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like very similar on both sides of the ball for both of these teams. And, if they want to be able to win this game on Sunday and kind of change the the course of their season or change the trajectory, or can kind of add to what they want to be or where they want to go, at least for the Chargers perspective, they have to play cleaner football. They can't cough it up. They have to be able to run the ball, and that's what both of these teams are going to have to do if they want to be able to win on Sunday. You can't be able to provide extra possessions to either team, because that could be the difference in a win and a loss.
Pal's over at Locked On Dolphins. David's over at Locked On Chargers. Go support them. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slate of games, but it will not do it for us over here on the Awesome NFL pregame shows. We still have a great 4 p.m. slate to dive into. That'll be coming up here on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. Makes watching football even more exciting. You've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. One of the big games of week 6 is Ravens and Rams, and right now on FanDuel, the Rams are road favorites, favored by 7.5 points right now. The Ravens currently 7.5 point home underdog. So whether you like the Ravens in that game or the Rams, you have got to get to FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL pregame show, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. We just wrapped up the 1 p.m. slate of games for week 6 with the help of our local experts. Well, now our local experts will dive into the 4 o'clock window, which has plenty of great battles as well. Speaking of that, the NFC, they have a lot of great teams this season, and there's going to be another heavyweight battle here. The San Francisco 49ers, who are winning despite all the injuries they have, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who pulled off a great win over the Seahawks in week number 5. So Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers and James Yarko of Locked On Bucks talk about which team will come out on top in a big game.
Wrapping things up here on a Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bucks. And this Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. James Yarko of Locked On Bucks, Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers. And Croc, what do the 49ers need to do to go on this incredibly long road trip, head to Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, and leave as the 5-1 team?
I think it's going to have to be them doing something they haven't done well all season and get after the quarterback. You got to put some pressure on Baker Mayfield back there, because one thing about Baker, he has a lot of self-confidence already. And the more you let him get into his groove and he starts kind of strutting around and he gets that confidence and letting it rip, you will be in trouble if you're the 49ers defense. So how do you stop that, or how do you contain that? Got to move him off of his spot consistently. You got to knock him down. You have to hit him and maybe force him into some throws that he doesn't want to throw, or untimely throws. So for the 49ers, I think that's the number one thing they need to do. If they want to get a victory, you have to figure out a way to get more pressure on the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, and Baker's been one of the better quarterbacks in the league over the last couple of years, where when he does get moved off his spot, he can take off and run. He can pick up those first downs with his legs, or his receivers have been really good about the scramble drills. So that's going to be huge for the 49ers, is not only to get him off of his spot, but to make sure that they're not letting somebody get open down the field and letting Baker work his magic. On the flip side, I want the Bucs offense to avoid that pressure. So to me, I think they're going to have to dink and dunk the 49ers to death. Long, extended scoring drives that span 14, 15 plays to not only chew up clock, but that are going to wear the defense out. The Niners, they have a good all-around defense. There aren't many weaknesses in their pass coverage or their run defense. It's been the pass rush that has been kind of the weak link there. So this is going to be a lot of taking what the defense gives you, stringing together, positive plays one after the other. If you find yourself in 3rd and long, a lot of times, like you did against Seattle last week, you're going to end up being in trouble. Short, quick passes, get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, to Abuka, Godwin, Shep, Rashad out of the backfield, Cade Otton, who had a big game against Seattle. You need to kind of adopt that death by 1,000 paper cuts approach.
I think one of the things the 49ers need to do is be able to play ahead of the sticks. It's been tough because they haven't been running the ball very well. So everything has kind of been on the quarterbacks, whether it's Brock Purdy or now Mac Jones. And with Mac Jones, he's done a good job. How long will he hold up being able to throw as many times as he has throughout his time starting for the 49ers this season? So I think being able to run, especially on early downs, they have to figure out a way to get that going. I think that's going to be a really big key for the 49ers. Mac Jones, he has done a decent job taking care of the ball. But again, we've seen the other side of this coin as well, where he starts turning the ball over at an alarming rate, throwing pick sixes, things like that. We do not want to see that version of him. If you want to limit those type of things happening, if you're the 49ers, you have to be able to run the ball. And you have to figure out a way to run the ball well early on downs. Christian McCaffrey, get him going, because so far it's been ugly, whether it's been Christian McCaffrey or Brian Robinson. And Brian Robinson has fared a little better than CMC. But, man, we have not seen those big runs that we're used to seeing from them.
Yeah, and the Bucs are coming off of the game where they just allowed over 100 rushing yards to an opposing team for the first time in like 14 or 15 games. It has been a really, really long time. And Kenneth Walker, he was able to break off a couple of explosive runs. He had one that was like 33 yards. He had another one that was around 25. So the Niners, to get their run game on track, might be catching the Bucs at the right time, because they're coming off of a game where they were not themselves in terms of run defense. But when I take a look at the Bucs defense, and you actually just touched on it, you have to find a way to take the ball away. Mac Jones, again, similar to Baker Mayfield, when those turnovers start, they come in bunches. The Niners are -3 on the season in turnover differential. They've thrown 5 interceptions to go along with 3 lost fumbles. The defense, as makeshift as it may be, in this game, they have to win the turnover battle. And just like they did against the Seahawks, the offense is going to have to capitalize on those takeaways. The defense is not going to look pretty. This is going to be an ugly, disgusting game from a Buccaneers point of view, because every game has been that way. But it's all going to come down to 1 or 2 key plays. Does somebody pull off an interception in the fourth quarter? Do you kill a promising drive that the Niners have going by forcing a fumble on a running play? That is what is going to make the difference in this one. So, Croc, I'm not going to ask you for a score prediction. We're way too early in the week for that. I usually give mine on Fridays, but you take a look at the spread, Bucs by 3, you get 3 points for being the home team. So this is basically a pick 'em. I think both of these teams match up really, really well with each other. We've talked about all the parallels. I think Niners fans and Bucs fans could, get together and share a beer over some of the shortcomings that they've had this year. But how do you see this game shaking out? Is this a game that, you feel the Niners can cover? Are they going to get an upset? Is this going to be the 5th win in a row for the Niners against the Bucs?
Well, the 49ers have done well, obviously covering the spread in a lot of these games early on. But I'm hoping, and I'm sure that a lot of 49er fans are hoping, that they can kind of ride the momentum of beating the Rams on the road. We say on the road because it was in Los Angeles, but they call SoFi Stadium Levi South. It's 90% 49er fans at that game. So this would be a more true road game. You're traveling across the country. It's going to be tough. I think you have to try to take the crowd out of it early on. And the 49ers can do that. Then you can figure out a way to kind of hang around, and maybe do like the Jacksonville Jaguars did to the 49ers and ultimately win that football game. 49ers are going to have to do something like that if they want any chance to beat Tampa Bay. But it's going to be tough. This is a team that I feel like is coming off of a good win, a lot of momentum, quarterback playing well. They even with their injuries, are a healthier team than the 49ers right now. I think it's a tall task for the 49ers to even to definitely win, potentially cover the spread, though.
Yeah, I take a look at this one. The Bucs have had a lot of firsts this year. They snapped a losing streak on primetime. They've snapped a losing streak in their throwback uniforms. Is this when Todd Bowles is finally going to snap the losing streak against Kyle Shanahan? I think they can. I feel like the Bucs, despite their shortcomings with the injuries, I think they still have more offensive weapons that are going to be there if the game is close in the fourth quarter, that they can make a play, that they can string together a drive and get that clutch score that they've been able to do just about every week this season. But it's going to be another one. Bucs fans, just buckle in. You're going to get more gray hairs. You're going to stress out. You're going to have a near heart attack like you have all 5 weeks of the season.
Be sure you check out Eric over at Locked On 49ers, and check out James over at Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals and Green Bay Packers. Cincinnati just traded for Joe Flacco. He will be the guy for them as long as Joe Burrow is out, and they're reeling right now. So hopefully Flacco can provide them a spark. Meanwhile, the Packers coming off of their bye. Their last game was a tie against the Dallas Cowboys, but they have started to look really, really good this season. So James Rapine of Locked On Bengals and Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers talk about key storylines, key matchups, and so much more.
All right, we're back here. Locked On Packers, Locked On Bengals, a crossover Thursday. And James, I mentioned 14.5 point favorites for the Packers. This is scary territory for Packer fans. They kind of don't know what to do. I think it's a Midwest guilt thing. They don't understand how to be favorites. It makes them nervous because, right, when you have expectations, it can set up disappointment. And guess who has been the author of disappointment the one time it has happened where the Packers have lost this season? Joe Flacco. So this seems a little weird to me, but there's a little bit of a boogeyman effect here. If you were going to put together a plan, let's say you just get to magic wand. Okay, if the Bengals do X, Y, and Z, they can win. What is X, what is Y, and what is Z?
X would be one, score touchdowns in the first quarter, because they haven't since, I don't think they did against Jacksonville. It might have been against Cleveland. I mean, they
were down 48-3, 28-3, and 28-3. So
yeah, no, it definitely wasn't with Jake Browning. The Joe Burrow era, it just seems like months ago, and it wasn't that long ago. So,
and it wasn't that great when we had the Joe Burrow era.
It wasn't, no. But I do think they had a first quarter touchdown in one of those games. But score early, first and foremost. Two, utilize your big weapons, and this needs to be the Jamar Chase T Higgins show. T Higgins has been a real non-factor for most of the season. That can't be the case now with Joe Flacco, and obviously everything that goes with that. Well, you're going to have to protect Joe. You're going to have to be able to get the ball downfield and get the ball to your weapons. And then the third one on defense is create chaos, create big plays, turnovers, fumbles, sacks. Those are the type of things that can put the Packers behind the chains, give you a chance, and certainly flip the field and take the crowd out of the game a little bit. So it's really a high level stuff, but that was their plan last week for sure. I thought they were going to spread the ball around to their weapons, and they were going to try to force a few turnovers against the Lions because they knew what that Lions offense was. And they forced a turnover, and they didn't score when the game was on the line, or when the game was still hanging in the balance. So they're going to have to fix those things. And if they do that, then could they have a chance? Yeah. I mean, Jamar Chase and T Higgins are freaks, and Trey Hendrickson is awesome. But there's no doubt that the odds that are not only stacked against them, it's a stacked deck right now against the Bengals going into Lambeau.
Yeah, I did the same thing with Spencer German, our pal from Locked On Browns, and we were sort of laughing about the Browns' path to victory, and then the Browns freaking won. So we see strange things that happen in the NFL all the time, and I don't want to make it seem, I've been saying for weeks now, there is no our sisters of perpetual sorrow game in the NFL. Those games do not exist. Every team can win any week, and so the Packers are still going to have to play a solid game to win, and the Bengals are capable of winning. To me, it's no turnovers, no big plays on defense. So don't turn the ball over on offense, and don't give up the big plays on defense, because if you do that, that's the game. Like the Packers were going to win against the Browns, against Joe Flacco, and there was one interception late that gets returned to the 4. Even if that interception just gets, like if he just stops where he is, they might only get a field goal, and the Packers might still win that game. Those are the moments. And then against the Cowboys, it was the blocked extra point. This special teams, James, is bad. It's one of the worst special teams units in the NFL right now. It's poorly coached. They don't prioritize it. There are a lot of reasons why. One of the recipes in an upset, if you're a 14.5 point underdog, what do you need? A blocked punt, a blocked kick, a big return, something like that. That first quarter score you mentioned, you get a return, right? You get a big time return, or you flip the field on a punt, or something like that happens. That can't happen for the Packers. They have to get that stuff buttoned up. And again, if they do, there's a lot of reasons to think the Packers are going to win. And that they're like, it's the dumb things, the big things, the catastrophic things. Like James, Matt LaFleur was talking about the special teams, and he goes, yeah, when we've had issues, they've just been catastrophic issues. And if we can clean those up, like we'll be okay. And it's just sort of like, yeah, but they're catastrophic issues.
Yes.
Like these are huge problems when they happen. And so it's kind of special teams, I always say is like plumbing. Like you don't really think about it until you have a problem. And usually when you have a problem, you have a big effing problem. And right now the Packers, there's water coming through the ceiling right now for the Packers special teams. And until that gets fixed, until we feel confident that that's buttoned up, I think that's going to make the Packer fans nervous every week.
Sure. I totally get it. And that is the path. I guarantee you the Bengals are talking about that as well.
Oh, no doubt.
And heck, Evan McPherson's been really good kicking wise this year. And so can you have the advantage there? Can you get out to an early edge where you take the crowd out of it a little bit? Or is it the other way? Because they've seen it firsthand in Minnesota. Packers fans are well aware of this, how hard it is to play in Minnesota when you're down early.
Yeah.
And that crowd gets into it. Denver, it was the same way. You get down and it snowballs really fast. And so that's huge in the special teams. I'm glad you mentioned that because the Bengals could certainly use a Charlie Jones punt return or kickoff return for a touchdown or a couple of Evan McPherson field goals instead of Ryan Rico punts from 50 plus. I think that would help their cause as well.
Yeah, Zach Taylor has to stop being a coward when it comes to his kick go decisions, but that's a separate issue. The thing too, James, is I mentioned the restless Packer fans. If this is like 10-7, 10-10, 7-7 at the end of the first quarter, there are going to be some tight sphincters at Lambeau Field. Like they are ready to be, mad about all of this. So I said on Monday, like this has to be a game where you come out and you're just up 14-0 because the fans are going to get restless. And if you do that, then all of a sudden you make the Bengals one-dimensional, and I think that's untenable for them. Like they're just not going to be able to sustain offense that way. So coming out, I like your thing for the Bengals, for the Packers. Like come out and start fast. Just put the game away in the first quarter. Like we've seen the Bengals be in that position the last 3 games. So we know it can be done.
No doubt. And that's why starting just differently where your defense doesn't feel like it's going to be out on the field the whole time and trailing the whole time, and you put yourself in that position. The pressure should be on the Packers though, because it's a game they should win.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco 5 days after being traded, like they should play sort of free, and we'll see if they do. I don't know if that means pulling off an upset and shocking the NFL world in week 6, but there's something to that, especially if they can get off to a good start and take a lead early.
Check out Peter over at Locked On Packers and James over at Locked On Bengals, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Titans and the Raiders will round out the 4 p.m. slate of games across the NFL in week 6. And you got to talk about Cam Ward. You got to talk about Geno Smith. 2 teams that are looking for a win and just from some confidence here. So you got your boy Q of Locked On Raiders and Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans taking you through everything you need to know.
All right, Q, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On Titans, Locked On Raiders, Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, we'll have even more preview of this game for you guys on tomorrow's episode. So make sure that you come back and check that out. But we talked about storylines. We talked about matchups. Now we need to talk about kind of the keys to victory in this one. And Q, as I've been saying, I think it's turnovers. You mentioned Geno Smith's issues. He's got 9 interceptions, leading the league. The Titans have had a couple of fumbles. Cam Ward has had some interceptions. Not all of them are 100% on him, and some are at the end of games where he's trying to make stuff happen. But nonetheless, turnovers often, especially with 2 teams who aren't great teams right now, turnovers can swing things one way or another. And I think it's pretty obvious that whoever wins the turnover battle in this one is going to be in a great position to take home the victory.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, man. Tyler, a lot of times I'll try to go into great detail on how the Raiders could get the victory and give all these keys, offense, defense, special teams, coaching, like try to really break it down, make a lot of sense. Sometimes it's really simple. Sometimes it's basic math. Don't turn the damn ball over, right? It's just that simple. The Raiders are turning the ball over at such an alarming rate, led by Geno Smith, that's the main problem, right? You can't have a sustained drive. You can't get any rhythm on offense. You can't do anything, right? I mean, you're just not getting out of your own way. And so the Raiders need to figure out how to not do that. At some point, Geno's just got to decide, I'm not going to turn that rock over. right? I know he's a guy that wants to stretch the ball down the field. I know he's a guy that wants to be aggressive. He wants to have a big explosive plays. But right now, that's not okay for you. You're not cutting it. So you got to go ahead, take what's there, take the check downs at time, throw the ball to the running back out of the backfield. You got to take the layups, right? It's almost like he's got to go ahead and see the ball go through the hoop a few times before he decides he's going to throw the ball around the yard. So it's all about turnovers with the Raiders, man. If they want to give themselves any kind of chance in this game or any other game the rest of the season, it's all about turnovers. You limit your turnovers, you increase your chance to win. You have more turnovers, you're going to decrease your chance to win. Again, basic math. It's really simple. 1 + 1 will always equal 2. It's just that simple.
Yep, you're 100% right. And the Raiders' turnover differential is significantly worse than the Titans. They're -6 right now on the season, second to last in the NFL, and the Titans are kind of middle of the pack, kind of evened out because they got so many turnovers in week 1. But a concerning trend is the Titans have turned the ball over on offense every single game this year. 2 against Denver, 1 in the next 3 weeks, 2 last week. And I know one of those, Cam Ward, we joke, Cam Ward's so good that even his interceptions turn into touchdowns for the Titans. But realistically, that's stuff like that's not going to happen all year. So if you keep turning over the ball, you're going to be in a terrible position. The last thing that I do think is a key to victory for both teams is running the football. When you have a young quarterback in Cam Ward who, hasn't seen everything at the NFL level, and there's a good pass rusher in Max Crosby, who if he knows it's a pass and he can just pin his ears back, it's going to be tough to deal with him no matter how well you're playing. And then the Raiders, when you have a quarterback that's not playing well, giving him easy opportunities and short third downs that he doesn't have to feel the need to create those plays, I think that'll be big too. Tony Pollard has had some fumble issues, but I think the Titans' offensive line is slowly getting it together. What's the status of the Raiders' run game, and do you think that they can take advantage of a Titans' run defense that isn't all that great at times?
Yeah, I do. And that's definitely going to be a big key for the Raiders is to continue to get Ashton Jeanty and Raheem Mostert going in the running game, right? And Jeanty has been really good, even though I know some people will look at the stats and be like, oh, he's not all that, but he's been playing really well. He's been, really breaking out, and especially in that Chicago Bears game a couple weeks ago, really had a big-time performance, including a 64-yard play that he took to the house. It was fantastic, and, just seeing him up close and personal, he's so much fun to watch. You'll enjoy it. Even watching from a position of wanting to see Tennessee win the game, you'll enjoy watching Ashton Jeanty. He's just one of those players. So that'll be fun. But yeah, they'll definitely try to lean on their run game as they should. And a lot of times they get Trey Tucker involved in the run game as well with the little jet sweeps. I mentioned that earlier in the end of rounds. They like Trey Tucker a lot. So they're going to try to use his speed to their advantage, get him involved. And I think that that's really something that they'll lean heavily on. Again, trying to keep Geno from making mistakes. I'll say this, though. Another side note, Tyler, another key to this for the Raiders is special teams. Special teams has never been an issue for the Raiders. Matter of fact, it's always been a strength of this team. It has been everything but that this year. It has been a disaster. They've had a field goal block. They've had a punt block. They give up big-time kick returns. They've had a kick return last week go for a touchdown. They got called back for a holding penalty, but that was one that got housed. They had one a couple weeks ago that got housed. I mean, they're not very special on their special teams. So that's something to pay attention to. If Tennessee could take advantage of the Raiders' weaknesses, they just signed a former linebacker that was in Seattle. He was on the Pittsburgh practice squad, pure special teamer. And Pete Carroll told me on Monday when I asked him about special teams, he said, look, I need more defenders on special teams because we're not getting it done. So they go out and get a linebacker that he's very familiar with to add to the special teams. So they know it's an issue. Everyone in the league knows it's an issue. That's definitely somewhere Tennessee could take advantage.
Well, for Raiders fans listening who the name probably wouldn't stick out on the depth chart or anything like that when you're looking, but rookie out of Florida, Chim DK, he has been, I think, the Pro Bowl returner in the AFC through 5 weeks. He had a 66-yard kickoff return last week. He has had a monster return. One got called back in week 2 where he took a punt to the house, and it was a terrible decision by the linebacker to block in the back 5 yards behind the returner who was already past him. But the Titans' return game has been very good this year. So if you're a Raiders fan, you got to look at Chimere DK and be like, they can't let him get going because he has shown that he can make big plays. And for the Titans, you look at that. If special teams can be a benefit to them and swing the game, that would really help them win on the road as well. So great call out there, Q, to talk about special teams. That could be a place to give the Titans some optimism and the Raiders some worry. So they need to be ready for that.
Check out Tyler over at Locked On Titans and your boy Q over at Locked On Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. 4 p.m. slate of games, that's all there is. But there are plenty of awesome primetime matchups we're going to get to here, so be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Continuing on the Ultimate NFL pregame show, Kevin Ostreicher, we're here previewing all of Week 6 action across the NFL with the help of our local experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get to those primetime matchups. And man, the Sunday night football matchup is going to be a good one. The Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. This could be a potential Super Bowl matchup. So Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy of Locked On Chiefs and Matt Derry of Locked On Lions, they talk about everything you need to know heading into this game.
The keys to winning the game for the Chiefs and the Lions. Let's get down into it right now. Matt, what do you think is one of the biggest keys for this Lions team to pull off a victory again in Kansas City?
You know, this is kind of crazy, but the Lions punter, Jack Fox, has been tremendous and has pinned teams deep. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens throughout that day had long fields this past week with the Bengals, and that was Jake Browning, and we know how that turned out. He's being replaced by Joe Flacco. But regardless, pinned deep. Lions had a safety this past week, should have had 2. Fox has flipped the field tremendously over the last few weeks. One of the reasons why this team has won 4 in a row. So their defense has been put in spots where, you know, it's a little simple thing here. But on the road, you get a bad punt, or you get Dan Campbell deciding to go for it from his own 35 or something, and you don't get it. Short fields for the Chiefs, I think, are gifts for Patrick and that offense. So I think the Lions, a key is to make the Chiefs go 90 yards, make the Chiefs go 80 yards. And I know things are different now with kickoff rules and everything, but I think that's a big key for the Lions, is to kind of make Kansas City play the long game throughout the night.
This is a tough one for the Chiefs because they have to do what they haven't been able to do. Job number 1 is to pressure the quarterback. That's it. He's got the second lowest scramble rate in this league. He is somebody that you can actually move off the spot and attack. The Chiefs just haven't been able to do it. So whether they have to bring 5, they brought a lot of linebackers last week, still wasn't that effectual. They have to come up with something that isn't a cover 0 blitz, because that seems to be the only thing that Specs can get actually executed on the night. And they have to find a way to find that crease and just blow it apart. They are too soft in not exploiting something that is a weakness. They have to find that. More from us tomorrow on what I think that it is. But this is about attacking and consistently making somebody stop you to the point that maybe they can even lower their EPA on the run. I'm really surprised to find that correct me if I'm wrong, the Lions are only averaging 15 yards more per game on the ground than the Chiefs are. That's pretty rare here. So if you force them into having to run the ball a little bit more, I think that works in the Chiefs' advantage.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned Spags. More blitzing, less blitzing this year so far than the past?
It's been dramatically upticked in the beginning. And it's not even so much the volume, it's the variety. Things that he usually doesn't pull out until after the bye or even going into the playoff run. Now he's having to mix it up so much earlier. It's going to get creative. It's going to look very weird. So keep an eye on the middle of the secondary there, because you never know who's going to be manning what position.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, Jared Goff, and again, with Ragnow gone, I still think Glasgow, as a veteran center, is pointing some things out. But that's where you're right. Brian Flores has tried for years, and he's done a nice job with the Vikings. Don't get me wrong. But Goff seems to have those guys' numbers whenever that's like, he'll see something coming and he gets rid of the ball. You're right. If you can get to him or you get in his face, it's gold. He just is not going to scramble. He was sacked 4 times this past week, but man, does he pick up those things pretty quickly and finds those outlets. And if he hits Gibbs in the flat, the blitzes come, look out. Jameer could turn a 10-yard play into a 70-yard play. So what else are you guys thinking on the Chiefs side for keys?
I loved what you're talking about with Jack Fox. I was sitting there thinking former Chief Jack Fox, because he was in Kansas City for a little bit of time. I agree. I think, blitzing Goff is going to be interesting, and I'm going to be curious to see if it happens, because they didn't blitz. They blitzed Lawrence a little bit, but not near as much as I expected. But the bigger thing with Goff, it's a question of, you get him off the point. He's not going to be a guy that scrambles like Lamar Jackson the week before or Trevor Lawrence. So that could be huge in this game. When I look at this, and I just think that it's a matter of Kansas City controlling the ball and controlling the clock. I'm not going to say that they have to run the ball, 30 times, but I think that they need to run the ball 20 to 25 times. And I know Ryan is probably going to be sitting there going, please let that happen. But the reality is look at what the Detroit Lions do. Their offense scores, and they can score pretty quick. So it's a matter of controlling the ball, controlling the tempo a little bit. And the one thing I will say about Kansas City is the two of the 3 games that they've lost this year have been caused directly by a horrible turnover. They've been very good with the football otherwise. That is a huge key. If they can win the turnover battle against the Lions and force them into a mistake where, they get a short field or just, the Lions lose a possession, I think that's huge in this game.
Yeah, I'll throw another thing out there as far as a key. His name has not been called a lot. And maybe Sunday night, prime time, NBC, he breaks out. That's Jamison Williams. I think teams are taking the deep ball away. They're taking the home run ball away. He and Goff have just not been on the same page. There's no relationship problems there. J-Mo has been awesome again on the run, in the run game, blocking, and he's just picked up he's as good a blocking receiver as there is. And you got to block to play in this offense, but just hasn't gotten going at all. If you look at his numbers, you're shaking your head like, what's going on here? They get 2 fantasy points this past week. So J-Mo on a deep ball or a reverse, something where he can get out in space. He's dying to touch the ball, and that has not happened yet. So maybe that's a key, is that if he gets going, then this could really go to another level with this offense, because as you guys said, it's been pretty good this year. Real good.
And the corner that gets to guard him is going to be interested. I will say that. One more bonus from me, too, is it's about the red zone. The Chiefs running a middle of the grade 14th in red zone efficiency, but the Lions giving up number 25 on the defensive red zone efficiency. So if you can get inside the 20, you got to make it pay. That's a key for the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Lions defense, week 1 was really bad. And excuse some of the numbers because that was an abominable performance against Green Bay. But since, it's just been, Lions going back to being what they've been the last few years. And they put up over 34 points in these last 4 games. And there was always some sidebar with each game, whether it was the Ben Johnson return or obviously the night game in Baltimore on Monday night. They really wanted that one. And this past Sunday, you had David Montgomery going back to Cincinnati and DJ Reader. So there's been storylines everywhere, but this one will be a lot of fun because, like we said, Kansas City needs this game. Not to say the Lions don't. They want to win every game. I don't think anybody thought at this point of the year, with how tough the schedule was, that the Lions would be 4-1. I think even the slappies would have said 3-2. So the Lions are giving their fans a little bonus right now, and this would be some kind of win to win against a desperate Chiefs team on the road. This would be something else.
Yeah, and I do think that one of the biggest matchups in this game is the Detroit Lions offense versus this Chiefs defense, because you look at what they did to the Baltimore Ravens, who had one of the best offenses in football before they played the Chiefs, and they've struggled with Lamar Jackson being out, and they slowed down. They were able to slow down and stop Derrick Henry. That could lead to a big chance for Kansas City to win this game if they can find a way to slow this Lions offense down. That's tremendous and has a lot of good players and a lot of different ways that they can beat you. Really going to be a lot of fun to watch this game. Cannot wait. Matt, you got anything else you want to add?
I don't. I was thinking predictions, but it's terrible to say, but I really am on the fence. Obviously, I can see the Lions winning because they played so well, but I just have a hard time picking against Kansas City in a game they have got to get. And are they really going to lose back-to-back, primetime games, a Monday nighter and a Sunday nighter? I know how Mahomes operates. I know you guys, they always seem to find a way. So that scares me a little bit.
My prediction is there'll be no tie.
Oh, geez. We did already have one earlier in the year, right? So I don't think it's going to be 40-40, but the Lions can score 40, and then probably the Chiefs could probably score 42 if.
Especially if they get the wide receivers going on deep balls against these corners, so that'll be a lot of fun to watch. Cannot wait.
You can find Chris and Ryan over at Locked On Chiefs, and you can find Matt over at Locked On Lions, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Bills and the Falcons will kick off the Monday night doubleheader. And the Bills coming off a tough loss to the Patriots. The Falcons, they're coming off of their bye week, but looking to pick up a big win over Josh Allen and company. Joe Marino of Locked On Bills, Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. They talk about all the key storylines and matchups you need to know.
So wrapping up here is today's crossover Thursday here. Aaron Freeman,
Joe Marino. We're talking keys to victory. Joe, get us started.
Well, I know we come in with 3 keys, but I feel like I have to talk about 1 and 2 in concert here. I've already gotten into Bijan Robinson and the problem that he is. And I'm sure, man, you're going to do however many crossovers this year, and every one of these hosts are going to come in here talking about, well, they got to figure out how to deal with Bijan Robinson, right? So I'll be no different here. I don't have the answer for that. If I did, I might be coaching. But he's a problem, right? And I think because of that, I think you have to be willing to play a little bit differently. And what I would do in order to defend Bijan Robinson and neutralize him the best you can is I think it affects the way you structurally play defense. And I think your best opportunity to contain Bijan is to obviously get population to the football. And I want to put guys in a position to get there quicker and have less distance to cover. And so I want to be more willing to play one high middle of the field closed coverages where I commit somebody as a hole defender. I want to play Cole Bishop or Taylor Rapp, one of my safeties, more towards the line of scrimmage. And I think in doing so, I think you position yourself better to give yourself a better chance to contain Bijan Robinson. But also it goes into the key and the idea that we were talking about already, that Atlanta just hasn't proven to be much of a threat throwing the ball down the field. And I think that will probably change at some point. But make them show that they can do it. Right now this season, Michael Penix, when throwing the ball to a target that's 10 yards or more down the field, he's 17 of 43 for 311 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. His passer rating on throws targeting somebody 10 or yards more down the field is 45.8. That's dead last in the NFL. His completion percentage on throws 10 or yards more down the field is 39.5%. That's 29th out of 32. His completion percentage over expectation, minus 6.8, 29th in the NFL, and his accuracy's been bad. His catchable ball rate on throws 10 or yards more down the field is 51%. That's 31st. Maybe he can get it together. And I'm not saying the book on him is written, but he needs to prove that this year. And I'd invite it. I'd invite it at the expense of maybe giving up a deep play, but I'd rather do that than sit there and have Bijan Robinson just rip off chunk after chunk after chunk because you didn't get enough population lower to the alignment to give yourself a chance to contain the guy. So I think it goes hand in hand. How do you stop Bijan Robinson? I think it's population. And in doing so, I think you invite Atlanta to prove something that has not gone well for them this year based on your coverage structure.
Okay. I think that would be an interesting choice. So I hope the Bills do that because I want to see this Falcons vertical passing game get unleashed and get unlocked because that was going into the season something that we thought would be a strength and we haven't seen it quite yet. So
well, and I think the other side of that is, well, yeah, you're making a risk. I understand that. You also have been a very good team at rushing the passer this year. The Bills are like number 5 in the NFL in sack rate. Their pressure rates are very good. And you got a nice matchup opportunity. I don't think Elijah Wilkinson's a slug at right tackle. I think he's obviously an experienced player, but that's a depth player that you have a chance to go up against with Greg Rousseau and Joey Bosa, and Penix is left-handed. So that's his blind side protector. And so I do think, you do have to then rely on your pass rush, but I do think that there could be some ripe opportunities. I know that Atlanta's been pretty good in pass pro. Their metrics are very strong, but I do like that one-on-one matchup opportunity it's for the Bills to potentially win against the right tackle.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile gamble if you're the Bills. I think you given the success that team has had, that you feel like you can take that risk and see if it works out in your favor. And I think the Falcons will, if the Bills go down that road, I think the Falcons should have an opportunity to, make them pay for that. And that will ultimately, I think, be a key factor to deciding this game. When I look at, these keys to victory, they're always the cliches, but like the Falcons have to be better in the red zone. Buffalo has been pretty solid in the red zone, 14th on offense, 16th on defense. The Falcons, meanwhile, 26th on offense, 25th on defense. So as you move the ball, which the Falcons have had a lot of success moving the ball, things just started to stagnate once they get inside the 20. And if you're going to be able to keep pace with this Bills team, those things can't continue to happen. So you have to go out there and show that you can convert in the red zone. And that includes running the football. That includes, being more precise in your passing game and all those things. But these things like red zone and turnovers, these are cliches for a reason, because they do often decide the outcomes of these very close one-score games that often are the case in the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's a fair call out. It seems simple, but it's so true. The last key that I have down, Aaron, is the Bills got to run the ball. Got to run the ball. I mean, metrically, Atlanta's actually been pretty good defending the pass, right? And they're going to get A.J. Terrell back this week. I'm curious, though, after they played Baker Mayfield, it was J.J. McCarthy, Bryce Young, and Marcus Mariota without Terry McLaurin. So, I hear you, but also, that's not shying me away that their metrics have been good based on the quarterbacks. They hadn't been good defending the run. They're 27th in EPA per run. The Bills' run scheme is pretty unique in how they want to pound the rock. A lot of multiplicity. They'll get multiple tight ends. They'll get the fullback going. And I think through that, what you want to do is compromise the tackling ability of the corners. Like A.J. Terrell, really good football player, misses a ton of tackle. He's got a 16% career missed tackle rate. Mike Hughes misses a ton of tackles, 14% missed tackle rate. Billy Bowman, man, he's been a nice-looking rookie, but the guy has never been a tackler. Missed 25% of tackles in college, right on par, 17% so far in the NFL. You got to put these guys in positions where they got to tackle. And one of the things about James Cook is he's a really good spill runner. He's not a guy that is going to abandon tracks and just get horizontal. Like, don't get it wrong. He's not CJ Spiller. But he will employ spill technique sometimes on duo runs and really dare the slot to come and tackle or dare a corner to fill. And I think you got a ripe opportunity to challenge these corners and slot corner and Bowman to tackle. And I like how that could go for Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a CJ Spiller reference here on this crossover Thursday.
Oh, listen, I'll slander CJ Spiller any chance I can, man. Any chance I can do it.
Okay. Good old Clemson running backs.
Oh, he's good at Clemson. He's good at Clemson, but boy, the guy was allergic to contact in the NFL, and boy, you can't be that way in the National Football League.
That is true. That is definitely true. I do think stopping the run for the Falcons is going to be paramount. And you sort of mentioned it. I know some of my listeners get upset with me because I haven't been hyping up the defense to the degree that the numbers say I should be hyping. Oh, this Falcons defense is one of the top in the league. Statistically, it is. But I kind of want to see them against a real offense with a real quarterback before I can truly judge whether or not this Falcons defense is for real. It's definitely significantly improved over what the Falcons have historically had on defense. That is 100% true. But where exactly, how much improvement it is, I think we're going to find out on Monday night. And so it starts with stopping the run, but the pass defense, I think, is going to be competitive. But how competitive, I think, is sort of remains an open question because they just, as good as Baker Mayfield is, I don't think he's Josh Allen. Is basically where I'm at.
Well, and I mean, how about all these young players that Atlanta has? What's Jalen Walker, James Pierce, Rook? I'm not trying to say that last name. I'll tell you that. Xavier Watts, Billy Bowman. Caden Ellis. I like him, man. They got some really good young players and a lot of guys that just need more time. And so I think the fact that they, even though they're questionable opponents, anybody can watch this Falcons defense right now through 4 games and realize that they've made strides. And it's obviously there's a vision that they wanted to come into. And as those guys get time on task, you can start to feel it more and more. And going back to where we were at the beginning, I'm excited to learn more about the Falcons because I think they're a potent young team. How quickly can it come together? They'll have a good chance coming off the bye on Monday night to make the statement that New England did. Boy, they're the toast of the league right now, right? So Atlanta wants to get a little of that shine. They know what to do on Monday night.
Yeah, definitely. So, Joe, even though I cover this team every single day, I also want to find out more about this Falcons team going up against this Bills team. So, like I said, it is a great measuring stick for how far this Falcons team has come. And we'll get to see it all unfold on Monday Night Football.
You can find Joe over at Locked On Bills and Aaron over at Locked On Falcons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Last but not least, the Bears and the Commanders, they'll be battling it out in that second game of the Monday night doubleheader. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, battle of the first and second overall picks back in last year's draft. And David Harrison, Locked On Commanders, and Lauren Cox, Locked On Bears, talk about which of the 2 quarterbacks will come out on top.
Monday Night Football, Week 6 of the 2025 NFL season. Chicago Bears visiting the Washington Commanders. So many times, Lauren, the Commanders and Bears have played now in consecutive seasons that they almost might just become rivals. And I'll tell you what, the Commanders play the NFC North. The Bears obviously play the NFC East. Same position finisher. So we need the Commanders and Bears to finish in the same spot, and maybe we can run this back for Caleb and Jaden part 3. And if there's an exciting ending to this one, then the NFL audiences may be calling for it. I don't know if there's going to be a Hail Mary again, but that'd be something. I don't know what would happen if there was another Hail Mary win, especially if it was in favor of the Commanders. That would be a Bears fan's nightmare. But even the Bears came back with one. I mean, how do you not try to run that back for a third season? But Lauren, outside of the Hail Mary opportunity potentially, how did the Bears get a win this weekend?
Yeah, I think the way it looks is a healthier Bears team cleans up a lot of the little mistakes. You know, a big part of why they haven't been able to run the ball, I guess it's twofold. Is one that they haven't held up well, especially on the interior of the trenches, and then the linebackers behind them have not done a good job hitting the right gaps and finishing. That Tremaine Edmonds has not been particularly great in the running game, not overrunning runs sometimes, or not quite getting the gap he needs to, and then the other linebacker, Noah Sewell, leads the NFL in missed tackles, or did entering the bye week, I should say. So like they can get to the ball carrier sometimes, but then not wrap up, and it becomes a challenge. So, you get TJ Edwards and Kyler Gordon back in there. You stop the run a little bit better. The Commanders have a few penalties and get some of these longer down and distance situations. And then you get the opportune turnover here that gives the Bears offense a couple of extra chances with the ball. And I think there's enough confidence in Chicago that, not that the Bears are going to put up 35 points on this Commanders defense, but that they can hold their own. They can get to 20 or 24 or whatever they might be, that if the defense can just hold them under a reasonable threshold there, that the Bears can still be able to win this game, because I think they can trust that even if there's some pass rush concerns from the Commander side, like attacking the Bears offensive line, they found ways to get done against Max Crosby when the pass rush was a big deal. They found ways to get done against Brian Flores' blitzing Vikings defense. They can overcome some of the offensive line issues, which feels weird to say covering the Chicago Bears, because they have not been able to do that consistently in their history. But somehow the defense has become the bigger question mark in a game like this, and it's all about health right now. And then Jaquan Brisker's on the injury report all of a sudden, so if he's not able to go, and if some of the other guys aren't able to go, that's when it all starts crumbling down.
Yeah, Jaquan Brisker would be really big. He's the guy that I would not be upset if Adam Peters found a way to trade for at some point. Not obviously this season. I don't think he's entering the last year of his rookie contract right now, and if the injuries are a thing, they're probably gonna let him walk in free agency. So that's definitely not out of the question that he's available this offseason. Definitely been a big fan of his game since he came out of Penn State. So for the Washington Commanders, we've talked about the ground game. Obviously, you got to keep that rolling. Stay ahead of the chains. That means get the ground game rolling, but also be more disciplined. Don't get those penalties. Surprisingly enough, actually, the Commanders have a plus 25 margin. Like, opponents have 25 more yards this season in penalty yards, and that did not start that way. That started much more in the negatives for the Commanders. So they have gotten better, but instead of quantity, the quality, or the lack of quality, or the negative quality of some of those penalties, the negative impact they've had have been very, very substantial. So that's going to be something to watch. And then I think you got to force Caleb Williams into mistakes, right? Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, what they have in common besides their draft class and their draft positions is the fact they're both young quarterbacks. And everybody knows a young quarterback, especially one that's incredibly competitive, with both of these guys are incredibly competitive. Caleb wears it on his sleeves. So I think people tend to think he's a little bit more competitive than maybe some other guys, while Jaden is running around the field smiling and laughing at pass rushers as they're chasing him, things like that. But trust me, Jaden is just as competitive as anybody else that's going to be in any of these locker rooms. And young competitive quarterbacks, when they're falling behind or when they're trailing and it's getting into crunch time and the possessions are starting to thin, we know what they do, Lauren. They put the ball up and they put the ball into space. I'll tell you right now, I've picked up Quan Martin in my fantasy league. We play with individual defensive players. We get one each. I picked up Quan Martin this week because if the Commanders can do what I think they can do early in this game, then I think they can put Caleb in a position where he's going to put the ball up, and that roaming free safety might have an opportunity to grab a pick or two for me in this game. But of course, you have to get started, right? The Commanders have had struggles starting fast, offense and defense. They gave up 10 points in the first two possessions to the Los Angeles Chargers. A lot of people are not talking about that from last week because the final score is 27-10. But if the Cleveland Browns, if the Chicago Bears, I'm sorry, Bears fans, I did not mean that. If the Chicago Bears can get those 10 points like the Chargers did, the key for them obviously would be to not relinquish that control the way that the Chargers did, and to not let the Commanders take all that control. So we'll see. But I think that's going to be, beyond the two things that we've already talked about a little bit in depth. Again, the ground game, the penalties, forcing Caleb Williams into mistakes by getting an early lead, maintaining that lead, putting him in a position where he feels like he's got to make a play, or else it's just not going to work out. I think that's going to be the best thing for the Washington Commanders.
I will say, when it comes to Caleb Williams' decision making and turnovers, he generally hasn't had. I want to say maybe no. There haven't been any of those like super bonehead, like, oh, why did you try and force that ball into there? I mean, there was like one throw across his body, but anyway, a little bit nitpicky as to how bad of a decision it was. But like the turnover worthy throws he has made have been more like he sees it and he rushes it, and then he doesn't step into it fully, and it's a little overthrown, a little underthrown. Like it's more an accuracy thing than like a terrible decision. But still, it's still situation wise, like, yeah, you're behind, you're pressing, you're trying to do a little bit too much, and you see the throw and you just want to rip it and throw it in there. Like that's when he can get into some trouble there with the turnovers. Not so much like, oh, I'm gonna try a risky ball that I'm gonna throw into triple coverage, but it's more like it would have been an accurate throw, would have been a good decision, but the inaccurate throw is what made it a bad decision there. And one last thing I want to ask you about with the Commanders' running game in particular, how much of that is the running backs and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt or Bill or whatever they're calling him now? Like, how much of it is these backs are doing a really good job of making guys getting yards after contact, and how much of it is like this Commanders offensive line is run blocking really well and just bulldozing, controlling the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I think there's certainly an element of the running backs kind of creating yards and finding space to run and all that stuff. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, if you haven't watched them play yet, and you watch him for the first time on Monday night, you're going to see really good vision and really good ability to cut through a hole and not lose any of his speed. It's kind of amazing to me to see it in person, where he just doesn't lose even a millisecond of speed off of his run while he's cutting through a hole and making an adjustment. It's amazing. But the offensive line has certainly done their part and opened up holes and done things. Not just the offensive line, like just the blocking scheme in general. Luke McCaffrey will come through a hole and clear out a linebacker, do things like that. That kid is just reckless with his body and just throwing it all over the place. But I think something, and I'm glad you mentioned this actually, because it was in my notes, but I couldn't get to it earlier. Trent Scott as an eligible lineman, extra lineman. Really, it was kind of something that was born out of necessity. We did see it sometimes last year, but John Bates, best blocking tight end in the NFL, if you ask any Commanders fan, was injured, missed a couple of games. So to adjust to that, they started using Trent Scott as an eligible lineman a lot, like not just here and there. I mean, very, very consistently. You're going to hear, Trent Scott's number be called as an eligible lineman, or an eligible receiver a lot on Monday night, I think. And it's kind of just become part of the offense now because it's been so successful. So you're going to see that sixth lineman, but then you're also going to see John Bates out there, or you're going to see Benson out there too, very effective blocking tight ends. And you may end up with 6 or 7 capable blockers on the offensive line that they could also pass out of that look, right? So you can't just sell out on the run and say, okay, we're just going to go crazy here, because they could also pass to John Bates, an underrated receiver, Ben Sinnott, who hasn't really established himself as a receiver, but we believe he has that ability. And then, of course, Deebo Samuel's a short area target, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really given Cliff a little bit of a dynamic that, again, goes against the traditional air raid, what you think of him when you think of offense, but it's also been incredibly effective. And Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I mean, again, 111 yards rushing on 14 carries. Yeah, you want to give Bill all the credit in the world, but if you watch football, that there's a lot that's going on in the blocking scheme as well that's allowing that to happen. For Bears fans who don't know, yes, his name is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. We call him Bill because as a kid, he had no hair, and everybody called him Lil Bill after the cartoon character, and it just kind of stuck. So that's what we call him out here in these parts is Bill. That's where that comes from. I know some people are confused of how he's Ja'Cory and you call him Bill. That's why.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that, so I'm glad you snuck it in there. And yeah, the whole like multi-tight end thing, like that was sort of supposed to be the blueprint for the Bears offense with Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland, but then Loveland got hurt and it was slow getting him up to speed in the offense. But if they're both healthy, they're going to try and do more of that on Monday for sure.
You can find David over at Locked On Commanders. You can find Lauren over at Locked On Bears, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Sunday, enjoy football, and enjoy your weekend. And of course, be sure to check out all of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network for their analysis and input on the games. We'll have everything you need to know after week 6 and beyond. So thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and follow along, video form, audio form. We're here for you all the time across the Locked On Podcast Network. So be sure to stay tuned for what we have in store, and we'll see you right back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.